At 6:42 a.m., my phone buzzed on the kitchen table. Linda's name blinked across the screen with a text that hit harder than a door slamming shut. Plans change. You're not coming on the cruise. Emily wants her real dad. By noon, my marriage was already over. I stood frozen, staring at the screen like it might blink and apologize. The coffee pot hissed behind me, the last inch of brew burning, releasing a bitter smell that made the morning feel heavier. The AM radio mumbled a farm report out of Cedar Rapids. Outside, the maple by the driveway shivered in the wind. Leaves scuttled across the concrete like they were fleeing the day. I read the text again, and again. Same words, same calm cruelty. Linda had sent it like she was canceling a dentist appointment. No apology, no hesitation, just her authority in digital form. I didn't reply. I set the phone face down and watched it vibrate again. Another message clawing through the wood, trying to get my attention. I ignored it. I sat down in the chair at the head of the table, the one I always took without thinking, the one facing the window, the one Linda used to call your spot. The coffee went cold. I didn't notice. 14 years ago, I'd moved into this house on East Locust Street in Davenport with a couch, a toolbox, and a promise I fully intended to keep. Emily was 12 then, skinny, braces coming, eyes always watching. Her real dad, Rick Donnelly, had been gone more than he had been present. Linda told me that first night, sitting on the back steps with beers sweating in our hands. It's just us, she said. We're a family now. A family. She said it often over the years. Whenever money came up, especially when I paid for Emily's braces, Linda would squeeze my arm and say, "Your money is our money." When I dipped into savings for Emily's used Honda after she got into Iowa State, Linda said, "This is what dads do." When I set up the auto debit for the cruise, the Mississippi River anniversary trip she'd been hinting at for months, Linda kissed my cheek and said, "We deserve this, we." But the text didn't say we, it said my real family. The phone vibrated again. I stood and walked to the sink, pouring out the cold coffee without tasting it. The mug clinked hard against the porcelain, as if it were angry at me for wasting it. Steam curled and vanished into the air. I picked up the phone again. This time, a voicemail notification. I knew the voice before I hit play. Tight, fast, clipped, already annoyed. "Mark, don't make this into a thing," Linda said. "It's just, Emily asked for this. You understand, right? Call me when you've calmed down." Calm down. I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. Emily at 12, at this same table, her math homework spread out, crying because Rick hadn't shown up again. I remembered sliding out the chair next to her, not the head chair, and saying, "Okay, kiddo, let's do this together." Her crooked, relieved smile, like she'd been holding her breath for years. I played the voicemail again. Linda's tone was practiced this time, like a rehearsed line, a performance. I didn't call back. By 9:30, I was supposed to be on the road to Dubuque for a dealership visit, jacket on, keys in hand. I paused in the hallway where the family photos hung. There was one from the year we refinanced, Linda and Emily on the couch, me off to the side, hand on the back cushion, unsure if I belonged in the frame. I'd never noticed that before. At the dealership, I shook hands, answered questions, nodded at the right moments. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, buzzed again, ignored it. Driving home, I pulled into a Casey's, sat in the truck with the engine idling, listening to the silence that followed the buzzing, heavy, unreachable. I thought about calling my buddy Tom at the VFW, about calling my sister in Moline, about calling Rick Donnelly to ask him what the hell he thought he was doing, stepping back into our lives like an uninvited guest noticing the bill. Instead, I drove home. The house was too quiet. Linda had left early for the airport, making the bed perfectly flat, hotel style. I sat again in the head chair and stared at the empty place settings, imagined Linda and Emily on the cruise deck, wind in their hair, Rick leaning against the railing like he had earned the view. My phone buzzed. Emily. Please respect our space. I stared until the letters blurred. I set the phone down, didn't throw it, didn't swear, just turned it face down, pushed it a few inches away, like you do with something too hot to touch. The AM radio clicked into a story about river levels, boats, departures, returns. I sat longer than intended, listening, breathing, letting the hurt settle into something heavier, steadier, something that didn't need yelling, something that didn't need permission. That was the moment it stopped being about the cruise. That was when I realized it wasn't a bad morning or a misunderstanding. It was a line being drawn, a line they'd been inching toward for years while I paid the bills, smiled for the photos, and pretended everything was fine. I stood, pushed the chair under the table like clearing space, and turned off notifications on the phone. I didn't sleep much, not the tossing and turning kind, more the kind where your eyes close but your brain keeps walking in circles. Every time I drifted off, the line came back, my real family. It sat there, gritty, impossible to ignore. At 5:30, I gave up, shaved, dressed, made coffee again. This time, I drank it standing. The house felt different in the early light, like it was waiting for instructions. 3 missed calls from Linda, 2 voicemails. I didn't listen. On the drive to work, the AM radio faded in and out, farm reports, interest rates. I thought about the word rates, the way a man thinks about numbers he can't argue with, only prepare for. By 10, my hands shook. I told my assistant I needed to step out and drove straight to Davenport Community Credit Union. Same lot, same squeaky door, same teller, Susan. Morning, Mark. What can I help you with? She asked, smiling. I need to look at my accounts, I said, voice steadier than I felt. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, auto debits, all there, cruise payment scheduled, in my name, cold, useful, concrete. Back in the truck, I stared at the printouts until the numbers became more than accusations, they became information, the way math always is, fair and impartial. That night, instead of home, I went to the VFW. Half-full parking lot, low lights, fried onions and old stories in the air. I ordered a beer, sat at the end of the bar. Walt Prendergast slid onto the stool next to me, navy cap worn soft, 80 if he was a day. He looked sideways. You look like hell, he said. Feel worse, I answered. I didn't tell him everything, just enough, the text, the cruise, the way it landed. People don't change, Walt said, sipping his beer. They just get more honest when they think they've won. I stared into my glass. I don't want to blow things up, I said. Then don't, he said. Build something new, somewhere they don't have a key. That stuck with me. At home, I opened the filing cabinet in the spare room, screeching drawer, years of receipts, folders, records, everything my dad taught me to keep. Braces paperwork, Honda invoice, college fund deposits. Steady, small, years of effort. Then newer transfers, small, regular, hidden in Emily's name, not illegal, not massive, just hidden. I laughed once, short, surprised, not anger, clarity. My phone buzzed again, ignored, buzzed again, ignored. Next morning, I called the cruise line. Reason for cancellation? The woman asked, polite, uncurious. I'm no longer a passenger, I said, in more ways than one. Processed without comment. That afternoon, I met with an attorney the credit union recommended, younger than expected, desk cluttered, tie loose. The house is solely in your name, he said, you can sell. What about my wife? She lives there, that's not the same thing. Home again, head chair, papers spread, phone silent. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was tired, sure for the first time, sure that what I'd been calling patience was really permission. I stacked the folders neatly, slid the chair back. Tomorrow, I'd make a call. Silence had done its work. It gives you room to see what you've been avoiding, and now, I could. The realtor answered on the second ring. Her name was Karen Whitfield, based out of Bondorf. I'd met her once years ago at a neighborhood barbecue. Standing near the grill with a beer I didn't really want but drank anyway. I'm thinking of selling, I said. There was no pause. No, why? Just a professional tone. What's the address? 2 days later, Karen walked through the house while I trailed behind, hands jammed into my pockets. She tapped walls, checked the windows, jotted notes. The place looked smaller than I remembered, like it had already begun to loosen its grip on me. Your wife knows? She asked carefully. glancing up from her clipboard. She's traveling, I said. I'll handle it. Karen nodded. We can move fast if you want, but if she contests it, it could get loud. I'm used to loud, I said. I'm done with noise. That night, as I packed a box of old work shirts and tools I hadn't touched in years, my phone rang. Linda's name flashed across the screen. I didn't answer. It rang again, and again. The vibration skittered across the dresser like a bug desperate to escape. 2 voicemails followed. I listened to one. Her voice had sharpened from annoyance to something colder, sharper. Mark, stop this. You're embarrassing me. Rick's right here. He thinks you're overreacting. Rick, of course he was. I deleted the message and powered the phone down. The offer came faster than I expected. A young couple, Ben and Alyssa Morales, stationed at Rock Island Arsenal. First baby on the way. VA loan pre-approved. They needed to move before the end of the month. Karen hesitated. They're asking for a little off the price. I thought of the dining table, the head chair, the way I'd always slid it back in when things got tense. Tell them yes, I said. Signing day was quiet. Just me, the title agent, and the hum of fluorescent lights. My hand shook when I signed the last page. Just once, then it steadied. As I stood to leave, my phone buzzed back to life. A text from Emily. Dad, Mark, please don't do anything drastic. I stared at it, long and hard, before typing. I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago. That night, I packed the truck, only the essentials. Everything else stayed where it was, a monument to what had been and what I was leaving behind. Before dawn, I pulled out of the driveway. The house looked the same, solid, quiet, already someone else's, somewhere on the river. Linda and Emily raised a glass. I was driving west, watching the sunrise, finally breathing again. They came back on a Tuesday. I know because Karen texted me at 3:18 p.m. They're there now. I was sitting in a diner just outside Muscatine, a place with vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been thinking about being coffee once. I didn't respond. I folded my hands, stared at the napkin dispenser like it might explain everything. Then I picked up the phone and waited. Linda called first. No answer. 5 minutes later. Emily. No answer. Karen filled me in later, piece by piece, her voice calm like she was describing weather damage instead of lives unraveling. Linda had pulled into the driveway, laughing, suitcase still in the trunk, Emily behind her, sunglasses on, phone in hand. They both thought it was funny at first, some unfamiliar car, a neatly trimmed lawn, a new planter by the door. Then Linda tried the key. Karen said she rattled the knob hard, as if the lock might apologize. When it didn't, Linda stepped back, eyes wide, scanning the house like it had personally betrayed her. She called my name, then dialed. Inside, Ben Morales opened the door halfway, chain still on, polite, apologetic, told her they'd moved in that morning, gave his name, asked if he could help. Linda laughed, short and sharp, told him he was in her house. Ben asked what she meant. Then Linda yelled. Alyssa came up behind him, hand on her stomach. Emily stood frozen on the walkway, phone down, face pale. Karen said it was the silence that got to her most, that half second when Emily looked around like someone expecting a punch. The police came, 2 officers, one older, clearly wishing to be anywhere else, paperwork, names, dates, verification. The older officer turned to Linda. Ma'am, whose name is on the deed? Karen said Linda didn't answer right away. That pause, that's when it landed. Linda called me again. I answered on the 4th ring. Mark, she said, breathless, what did you do? I leaned back in the booth. A semi rolled past outside. Somewhere a car alarm chirped and stopped. I sold the house, I said. You can't do that, she snapped. That's our home. It was my house, I said. You just lived in it. She started talking fast. Threats, court, how dare I, how Rick would never have done this. Rick. Emily came on the line. She didn't yell. That almost hurt more. I didn't think you'd really do it, she said, voice cracking. I didn't think you'd really mean what you said, I replied. But here we are. A long pause. I could hear Linda calling my name in the background, like a curse. I raised you, I said finally. I didn't rent a place in your life. Emily didn't answer. Call ended. I finished my coffee, bitter now, but honest. That night, I sat alone in the small rental near the river. Nothing fancy. One bedroom. A table just big enough for one, though sometimes it could fit two. A card lay on the counter from Ben and Alyssa, thank you note. Ultrasound photo tucked inside. I sat at the little table and pictured the old dining room, the head chair, the spot I used to slide in and try to hold everything together. For the first time, that chair was empty, and it didn't feel like a loss. Linda filed the complaint a week later. Not divorce, not yet. She went for the house first, like she could rewind time with volume. I got served on a Friday afternoon. Paper stiff. Official. My name spelled correctly for once. The Scott County Courthouse smelled like old books and disinfectant, the kind of place where voices drop without asking. I wore the same blazer I'd worn to funerals and dealership dinners, just clean, nothing fancy. Manila envelope tucked under my arm, heavy with years of memory. Linda arrived 10 minutes late, heels clicking like nails on tile. Emily followed, eyes down, holding herself like a shield. Rick trailed behind, hands in pockets, smile too easy for the room. The mediator, a woman in her 60s, reading glasses dangling from a chain, looked over the file once. Let's keep this simple, she said. We're here to discuss property. Linda jumped in. He abandoned us, pointing at me like I was a stain. He sold our home. My daughter was humiliated. The mediator held up a hand. Mr. Halverson, your turn. I waited. Let the words pile up. I didn't abandon anyone, I said, calm. Even, I stopped paying for a life I wasn't allowed to be part of. I slid the envelope forward. Deed, mortgage statements, receipts, cruise auto debits, all dates circled. Linda scoffed. Money isn't everything. You said it was when it was mine, I replied. The mediator read carefully, then looked at Linda. Property solely titled in Mr. Halverson's name. That's not fair, Linda said. Yes, the mediator said, but marriage alone doesn't change ownership records. Rick leaned forward. I'm her father. Emily deserved that house. I looked at him. Really? Like she deserved child support? Silence. I've got receipts for that too, I added, tapping the envelope. Insurance gaps, tuition shortfalls, emergency repairs. Emily looked up. Wet eyes. Recognition. Legally, the mediator said, Mr. Halverson acted within his rights. Linda slumped. So he just gets away with it? I didn't get away, I said. I paid for 14 years. No gavel, no applause. Something shifted. Outside, sun bright on the courthouse steps, I breathed air that felt earned. Emily came out last, stopped a few feet away. I didn't know, she said quietly. I know, I said, but knowing now matters. We didn't hug, not yet. I walked to my truck alone, the river low that fall, rocks sticking up like teeth, mornings spent sitting on the bank, thermos and folding chair in tow, watching the Mississippi wake, slow, honest, without apology. The rental small, radio if you tuned right, things that require patience tend to tell the truth. I didn't hear from Linda for weeks. When I did, a short email about mail forwarding, a bill she thought I still owed, forwarded to my attorney, let it go. Emily texted in October. Can we talk sometime? I stared, longer than I meant to. We can, I wrote, when you're ready to listen too. We met at a coffee shop halfway, neutral. She looked older, tired, awake. I didn't know about the money, she said. I wasn't keeping score, I said. I was keeping promises. She nodded, eyes down. I shouldn't have said what I said. I let the words sit. I'm not asking to go back, she said. I just didn't realize the cost. That's the thing about costs, I said. You don't feel them if someone else is paying. We finished coffee, hugged briefly, awkwardly, honest. On Thursdays, I returned to the VFW, waltzed there most nights. You look lighter, he said. I am, I said. Turns out silence weighs less than pretending. Winter came. River turned steel gray. I bought a thicker coat. Learned to cook for one. Some nights I thought of the house on East Locust Street, the dining table, the head chair. I don't do that anymore. What I learned, what 14 years and one quiet text taught me. Love without respect is labor. Silence, when chosen, can be strength. Sometimes dignity doesn't shout. It signs the papers, packs the truck, and keeps going.